The Terminator. James Cameron sold the script for $1 so he could direct it himself, and the budget that resulted launched a 7-film franchise. The film hit theaters on October 26, 1984, with Cameron directing and Gail Ann Hurd producing through Pacific Western Productions. The dollar deal went to Hurd on the condition that Cameron stayed in the director's chair, and that handshake is the only reason any of this exists. The final production budget came in at $6.4 million, up from an original pitch of $4 million, and a pre-production revision to 6.5. Hemdale Film Corporation, run by John Daly and Derek Gibson, financed the picture, and Hurd locked in distribution through Orion Pictures. Filming began in March of 1984 and ran 12 weeks, almost entirely on the night streets of Los Angeles, to mask how little money was on the screen. Stan Winston's endoskeleton work and the stop-motion combat were built on a fraction of what the franchise's later effects budgets would consume. The film earned more than $78.3 million worldwide on its first run, more than 12 times what Hemdale put in, and the studio walked away with proof that a director-for-hire indie could outgun every action tentpole on the slate. 5 theatrical sequels followed: Terminator 2 Judgment Day, Rise of the Machines, Salvation, Genesis, and Dark Fate, along with the Sarah Connor Chronicles series and an anime continuation called Terminator Zero in 2024. Film schools still teach the dollar sale and the Hemdale deal as the template for how a low-budget genre film permanently changes what a studio thinks a sequel can earn. Frankenstein. Universal Pictures gambled $262,000 on Mary Shelley in 1931 and built the entire monster movie ecosystem off the return. The film opened on November 21st of that year, directed by James Whale, and produced by Carl Laemmle Jr. for Universal. The estimated production budget was that $262,000 figure, and the picture earned roughly $1.4 million in rentals on its first run, making it one of the biggest hits of the 1931 to 1932 box office year. Decades of re-releases pushed cumulative earnings past $12 million. Boris Karloff's monster makeup, designed by Jack Pierce, became the visual template every adaptation since has either embraced or defined itself against. Karloff was billed only as a question mark in the opening credits, a marketing move designed to build mystique around the creature before audiences even saw him. The success bankrolled the rest of the Universal Classic Monsters slate: Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein, Ghost of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, and 4 more direct extensions, plus the greenlights for The Mummy, The Invisible Man, and the broader Universal Monsters cinematic universe. This is the moment science fiction proved it could be a recurring profit center for a studio, and every section that follows is downstream of what Whale and Karloff did with under $300,000. Cube. A first-time Canadian director shot a contained room thriller for the cost of a used sedan and ended up with a 4-film franchise, plus a Japanese remake. The film opened on September 9, 1997, written and directed by Vincenzo Natali on his feature debut, produced by Cube Libre and the Canadian Film Centre's first feature project. The cash budget landed somewhere between $350,000 and $365,000 Canadian dollars, though Natali himself called that figure deceptive. Once you factored in donated services and deferred payments, the total production cost reached closer to $700,000 Canadian. The shoot ran 21 days in Toronto on a single 14-foot cube set, with rotating wall panels creating the illusion of multiple identical rooms. Worldwide gross climbed above $9 million American dollars on the cash budget figure, and the franchise expanded with Cube 2, Hypercube in 2002, and Cube Zero in 2004, both produced by the original team's Lionsgate partners. Director Yasuhiko Shimizu released a Japanese-language remake titled Cube in 2021. Natali went on to direct Splice and the Stephen King adaptation In the Tall Grass, but Cube remains the project he's still asked about more than any other. Tremors. A studio dumped this creature feature into theaters with no marketing in 1990 and accidentally launched a 7-film franchise that's still going. The film opened on January 19th that year, directed by Ron Underwood on his feature debut, written by S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock, and produced by Gail Ann Hurd's Pacific Western, the same outfit that had backed The Terminator. The production budget came in at $11 million. The theatrical run was a disappointment, with domestic gross of roughly $16.7 million, and the film looked like a write-off. Then VHS rental happened. Tremors became a top 10 rental title, building the cult audience that drove every sequel since. Aftershocks, Back to Perfection, The Legend Begins, Bloodlines, A Cold Day in Hell, and Shrieker Island, plus a Sci-Fi Channel television series in 2003. The graboid creature designs were practical effects from the Amalgamated Dynamics team, with no CGI in the original. In April of 2025, Underwood, Wilson, and Maddock recovered the rights under a U.S. copyright reversion provision and announced they're developing a Return to Perfection sequel, which means a new theatrical Tremors is finally on the table for the first time in over 3 decades. Quick note, if you're enjoying this so far, I make videos like this regularly. A subscribe would mean a lot. Thanks. Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Shinya Tsukamoto shot Japan's most influential cyberpunk film in his own apartment with a cast of 6 and turned it into a trilogy. The film released on July 1, 1989, with Tsukamoto writing, directing, producing, editing, and starring. He self-funded the project from his day job, using his Tokyo flat as both filming location and production base, and he shot for 18 months on black and white 16mm film. Most of the crew quit before the wrap. The trilogy continued with Tetsuo 2, Body Hammer, in 1992, and Tetsuo, the Bullet Man, in 2009, with Quentin Tarantino briefly attached as producer on Bullet Man before dropping out. Darren Aronofsky cited the film as a direct visual influence on Pi, and Tsukamoto's work has been credited as a wider influence on the Wachowskis' The Matrix generation of cyberpunk cinema. Critters. New Line bet $2 million on alien meatballs with teeth and got 4 sequels and a Shudder series out of it. The film hit theaters on April 11, 1986, directed by Stephen Herek on his directorial debut. The Krite puppets alone consumed $100,000 of the $2 million budget. Domestic gross came in at over $13 million, almost 7 times what New Line spent. The franchise expanded with Critters 2, the main course, in 1988, Critters 3 in 1991, which marked Leonardo DiCaprio's feature debut, Critters 4 in 1992, and the Shudder web series Critters: A New Binge in 2019. The film released 2 years after Gremlins and was often dismissed as a knockoff, though screenwriter Dominic Muir's script actually predated the Gremlins release by years. Mad Max. George Miller funded an Australian indie by working medical shifts on the side, and that film became the foundation of the most influential post-apocalyptic franchise in cinema. The film opened on April 12, 1979, directed by Miller and produced by Byron Kennedy on a budget of $350,000 to $400,000 Australian dollars, roughly $200,000 American at the exchange rates of the time. Miller and Kennedy partially financed production by working 3 months of on-call emergency medical shifts during pre-production, with Kennedy driving and Miller treating patients. The film earned over $100 million American dollars worldwide and held a Guinness World Record for most profitable film, holding the highest box office to budget ratio of any motion picture until The Blair Witch Project in 1999. The franchise continued with Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, in 1981, Beyond Thunderdome in 1985, Fury Road in 2015, and Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, in 2024, with Miller confirming work continues on a tentatively titled Mad Max: The Wasteland. Mel Gibson was 21 when cast as Max, in what became his first leading film role. Every dust and leather post-apocalypse from Fallout to Furiosa to dozens of imitators traces back to a $400,000 Australian film financed by emergency room shifts. Phantasm. A 24-year-old wrote, directed, shot, and edited a sci-fi horror film for $300,000, and it became a 5-film cult franchise. The film released on March 28, 1979, written and directed by Don Coscarelli at age 24, financed by Coscarelli, his father, and a small group of local investors. To stretch the budget, Coscarelli rented equipment on Fridays so he could use it across the entire weekend and pay only 1 day's rental rate. The film earned approximately $22 million internationally. The franchise continued with Phantasm 2 in 1988, Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead in 1994, Phantasm 4, Oblivion in 1998, and Ravager in 2016. Coscarelli wrote all 5 and directed the first 4. Angus Scrimm played the tall man across all 5 films from 1979 to 2016, one of the longest single-actor villain runs in any sci-fi franchise. RoboCop. Paul Verhoeven made a satirical Detroit dystopia for $13 million, and Orion Pictures got a 4-film franchise plus a TV reboot out of it. The film released on July 17, 1987, directed by Verhoeven and produced by John Davison for Orion. The production budget was approximately $13.7 million, and the film earned $53.4 million domestic on theatrical release. Verhoeven later said the tight budget actually forced creative decisions that improved the film. The studio couldn't afford both the practical suit and the Blade Runner production team Verhoeven wanted, and he picked the suit. The franchise expanded with RoboCop 2 in 1990, RoboCop 3 in 1993, the 2014 reboot, the 1988 animated series, the 1994 live-action television series, and the 2001 miniseries Prime Directives, with a sequel titled RoboCop Returns in development. The stop-motion Ed 209 sequences were animated by Phil Tippett, who had headed the Industrial Light and Magic team that handled the AT-AT walkers in The Empire Strikes Back. Re-Animator. Stuart Gordon adapted an obscure H.P. Lovecraft serial for $900,000 and ended up with a trilogy that's still cited as the gold standard of sci-fi horror comedy. The film released on October 18, 1985, directed by Gordon and produced by Brian Yuzna on a budget of $900,000, with a domestic gross of just over $2 million that expanded considerably on VHS. The script adapted Lovecraft's 1922 serial Herbert West Re-Animator. The franchise continued with Bride of Re-Animator in 1990 and Beyond Re-Animator in 2003. The project actually started life as a stage adaptation Gordon was developing, then a half-hour television pilot, before Gordon and Yuzna turned it into a feature. It's the same DNA as Frankenstein earlier in this list. The same mad scientist reanimates the dead premise, repeated every 50 years on whatever budget the era allows. Predator. John McTiernan's first studio feature was a $15 million jungle action film that became one of sci-fi's longest-running creature franchises. The film hit theaters on June 12, 1987, directed by McTiernan on his first studio film, and produced by Lawrence Gordon, Joel Silver, and John Davis. The production budget was approximately $15 million, though some sources cite $18 million, and the film earned $98.27 million worldwide on first release, with roughly $59.7 million of that from the domestic box office. The original creature design, a near-invisible alien with a stinger tail, was rebuilt mid-production after early footage tested poorly. Stan Winston redesigned the now canonical Predator on a flight to Japan, with input from James Cameron, who suggested the mandibles. The franchise continued with Predator 2 in 1990, Predators in 2010, The Predator in 2018, Prey in 2022, Predator Killer of Killers in 2025, Predator Badlands the same year, plus the Alien vs. Predator crossover films. Prey became Hulu's most-watched film premiere on the platform. Pitch Black. David Twohy made an Australian-shot survival sci-fi for $23 million and turned a side character into Vin Diesel's defining franchise. The film released on February 18, 2000, directed by Twohy, on a $23 million budget, shot on location in Coober Pedy, the underground opal mining town in South Australia. The film earned $53.19 million worldwide. Vin Diesel's Riddick was originally a supporting antagonist, but the character so dominated test screenings that the marketing was reworked to center him. The franchise expanded with The Chronicles of Riddick in 2004, Riddick in 2013, and Riddick Furia in development, plus the animated Dark Fury in 2004, and the video games Escape from Butcher Bay and Assault on Dark Athena, both story canonical to the Riddick timeline. The Eclipse Blackout creatures were designed by Patrick Tatopoulos and built as practical creatures by John Cox's Creature Workshop, then finished digitally on a fraction of the budget Aliens had spent 2 decades earlier. Without the test screening reaction to Riddick, the entire arc, the Furian mythology, the Necromonger Empire, none of it gets made. Alien. Ridley Scott walked into 20th Century Fox with storyboards and walked out with double his budget, and what followed is the longest, unbroken sci-fi franchise still in active production. The film opened on May 25, 1979, directed by Scott and produced by Gordon Carroll, David Giler, and Walter Hill for 20th Century Fox. The final production budget reached $11 million, but that wasn't the original number. Fox's initial approval was $4.2 million, and Scott doubled it on the strength of his storyboard pitch alone. The shoot ran 16 days over schedule, with main photography wrapping on October 21, 1978. The film earned over $104 million on its initial theatrical release. The franchise continued with Aliens in 1986, Alien 3 in 1992, Alien Resurrection in 1997, Prometheus in 2012, Alien Covenant in 2017, Alien Romulus in 2024, and the FX series Alien Earth in 2025, plus the crossover films Alien vs. Predator in 2004 and Aliens vs. Predator Requiem in 2007. H.R. Geiger's xenomorph design, biomechanical, sexually charged, deliberately unsettling, won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in 1980 and remains the most cited creature design in sci-fi history. Scott shot at Shepperton and Pinewood Studios in the UK, using forced perspective sets that made the Nostromo feel 3 times its actual built dimensions. Dan O'Bannon's original script was titled Star Beast, and he and Ronald Shusett rewrote it after the success of Dark Star in 1974 proved a micro-budget sci-fi could carry a feature. 45 years after that $11 million gamble, the Alien franchise is still releasing canonical theatrical films and prestige TV, and no other entry on this list has run longer without a hard reboot. If this was your kind of content, consider subscribing so you catch every new upload. Thanks for watching.